According to a new report from the Fraser Institute, as of 2023, 70 countries around the globe permit men and women the same degree of freedom to make their own economic choices. However, many others continue to impose severe restrictions on women's economic rights. Joining us to tell us more is Dr. Matthew Mitchell. He's a senior fellow in the Center for Human Freedom at the Fraser Institute. Great to have you with us, Matthew.
Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. Well, can you first of all give us a working definition of what you mean by economic freedom? What is that?
Yeah, so we say that people have more economic freedom when they are allowed to make more of their own economic choices. So choices about buying and selling, starting businesses, acquiring property, entering contracts, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, here in, Canada, Lethbridge, it's, we just take that for granted, I think, right? But not so, apparently, in a lot of countries around the world. So can you tell us how things were measured and categorized in this study?
Yeah. So what this particular study is looking at is the degree to which women enjoy the same amount of economic freedom as men. And it's also, putting that in the context of the broader economic freedom that both men and women, are permitted. So in terms of, looking at this gender disparity, what the author did is Rosie Fike, who's a professor down in the States, she looked at 17 different factors that relate to the degree of economic freedom of men and women. So they're looking at things like, is a woman allowed to start a business in the same way as a man? May she relocate in the same way as a man? Or can she work at the same hours or in the same types of businesses as a man? And so, looking at these factors, she's then able to make a determination about the degree to which the country permits women the same level of economic choice that men have.
Okay. So big picture, are women's rights economically improving globally, or are they on the way down? Where are we trending?
Yeah, so the big picture is actually positive. So, the data go all the way back to the 1970s, and the general trend is women having more and more economic freedom, more countries joining the list of countries that permit men and women the same degree of economic freedom. So that's great, and including in the latest data, we have one more country, Sierra Leone, joining that list. So definitely a glass half full there. There is some bad news though. So the bad news is there are 95 countries in the world that still do not permit women the same degree of economic freedom as men. 35 of those have quite pervasive limitations. Some of these countries, Cameroon, Chad, Djibouti, Iran, they have made zero progress in terms of eliminating these disparities for decades. So, a little bit of good news and a little bit of bad news.
Well, you mentioned some countries there. What are some of the worst countries on the planet, I guess, on that list? And are there others that are, kind of leading the way on the good side?
Yeah, so just to give you kind of a sense, and also maybe to give you a sense of sort of what we're talking about. So like Cameroon in West Africa, a married woman without a job can't own her own bank account in the same way as a man. In Suriname in South America, a married woman can't register a business in the same way as a man. So I believe that the country with the most pervasive restrictions on women's economic freedom is these are countries like Cameroon, Chad, Djibouti, Iran, Mauritius, and Yemen. They're all sort of tied near the bottom.
Okay. Now, it is fascinating that there seems to be a tangible trickle-down effect from economic freedom. And this results in things like greater life expectancy, lower child mortality, and better mental health as well.
Yeah, that's right. So in general, we find that those women who live in the most economically free countries in the world, they earn about 6 times as much as those who live in the least economically free. They're 40% more likely to work, 80% more likely to have a bank account, more than 3 times as likely to gain on-the-job training, in their profession. They tend to be healthier and better educated. And we also find that male and female disparities tend to be smaller in those countries. And you mentioned the word, trickle down. To some degree, some of this is trickle down, but some of it is just, just a result of empowerment is, women themselves are able to lead, if they're able to own a bank account and operate their own business, they're really, creating opportunities for themselves. They're not waiting for, opportunities to fall down from manna. They're actually doing it
Oh, I mean, can you imagine going through life not able to have your own bank account, and especially if you're single,
Yeah.
mom, like,
Yeah.
excuse me, like, I mean, wow, it's just mind-boggling. So, what are the some of the most common restrictions that we're seeing placed on women in some of these countries?
The most common are around where women are allowed to work. So the most
So,
common
location, like the type of business, that sort of thing, you mean?
Yeah, so one would be less location and more about the type of work. So
Okay.
manufacturing jobs, and then also the time of work. A lot of countries limit the ability of women to work at certain hours. And here you can kind of see some of this is paternalistic. It's the idea that, maybe we need to look out for women because we don't think that they're capable of looking out for themselves. But, what we find is that the paternalism doesn't really help women. Women tend to do better when they are permitted to make their own economic choices, make those types of trade-offs on their own.
Yeah, so a lot of control happening there. Does the lack of economic freedom for women also impact the overall economic prosperity of a nation that places these kinds of restrictions? You'd think so, because, I mean, there's less people contributing to the economy overall.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's where, this idea that, limiting the options for women actually limits men as well, because it means that, it deprives men of the opportunity to exchange with women, to work for women, to work at women-owned businesses. And so it actually tends to impoverish, all of society. And you see this fits quite nicely with what economic historians find, looking all the way back at, histories of slavery, for example, where it's not just that the enslaved people tend to obviously do much worse, but other parts of society also do worse in a slave society, or a society where people aren't allowed to make more of their economic choices, because you're essentially depriving yourself of a large segment of what economists would call human capital, but intelligent people who can contribute to the economy and make the world a better place. Those types of societies are essentially closing themselves off to that.
Mm-hmm. How does low economic freedom for women affect the type of education they can access? I'm guessing that's tied pretty closely together, right?
Yes, it is. And for a couple of reasons. Sometimes it may be, sort of directly related to it. It makes it more difficult for them to obtain an education. But often it's a little bit more indirect. If the economic freedom of a country is lower, there tends to be lower income. It makes actually less sense to invest in an education because you're not, you're greater uncertainty about the earnings that you could obtain, and the earnings tend to be lower. And so in many cases, it makes sense to just forego an education altogether, unfortunately, in these types of situations.
And what about the right to own property? Again, it seems so strange for us to be talking about this here in North America, but how often are we seeing restrictions on that?
So the good news is that those types of restrictions are relatively rare. The right to own property and the right to contract, it's only a handful of countries that are limiting these types of economic freedoms for women.
Okay. And are there any countries of note that have made improvements in economic freedom for women over the last decade or so?
Yeah, I think I may have mentioned Sierra Leone is probably the big bright spot here. They joined the list of countries, 70 countries with no disparity in economic freedom between men and women. Now, on the downside, Sierra Leone's overall level of economic freedom for both men and women is not that great. So it's a little bit of a plus and minus there.
Okay. Do we know why these nations made that decision to grant more freedom?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is, it's kind of going to be a different story in different countries. One of the reasons why we're doing this report is we're trying to, shine a light on this and work with the countries to help them appreciate the value of greater economic freedom. So I would hope to some degree, just by studying this, we're making some progress, and that has something to do with these changes. But the other thing I think is just slow moving cultural changes, ideas, again, about paternalism and not permitting women to make the same choices as men. In many places, they think they're helping women. But as I say, the evidence suggests that they're not.
Yeah, I wonder too if even now that we have so much more access to the internet around the world, the light's starting to come on in a lot of these countries saying, hey, wait a minute, this is working way over there. It might be on the other side of the planet, but why couldn't it work here? And maybe that has something to do with it as well.
Yes, I think that's true. And you tend to see over time, quite a bit of convergence across countries in terms of their institutions. And I think that's exactly it, is that, every business that's started in one country, every investment that's made in one country, every job that's created in one country, all of those things could be done in another country these days. It's much, capital, labor, businesses, they're far more mobile than ever before. And so that means that countries have to compete with one another if they want to attract the type of talent and they want to attract the type of business that's going to improve their living standard.
Yeah, so certainly I think there is an economic incentive as well for these nations, right? So any thoughts on where economic freedom for women will be, I guess, trending or going over the next decade? Are there ways to pressure stubborn governments to allow more freedom?
Yeah, so I anticipate it will continue to improve. The story basically is that it has improved just about every single year that we've been measuring this, so that's wonderful. But the improvements are getting smaller and smaller. We're sort of, grabbed a lot of the low-hanging fruit, and now at this point, it's the more stubborn countries that really need to change. So to me, it's just about education. It's about talking to as many people as possible and helping them appreciate the benefits of economic freedom. And again, talking to the men and helping them understand that, listen, allowing women economic freedom benefits you as well. It's not just the right thing to do, but it's also something that's going to benefit you.
All right. Thanks so much for your time today, Matthew.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Dr. Matthew Mitchell, a senior fellow in the Center for Human Freedom at the Fraser Institute, fraserinstitute.org.